use that as a backup. All right, I now call the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. on Wednesday, May 3rd. A few administrative notes before we get started. Today's meeting is being recorded and will hopefully be live streamed to YouTube in a couple minutes here. We also have closed captioning available for each user, and you can access that by clicking the button in the toolbar below. You can submit questions via the Q&A functionality also located in the below toolbar. If you are calling in, and I don't think anyone is, but if you are, rather than participating via the web, you can raise your hand by dialing *9, and we'll be monitoring questions throughout the meeting. And this meeting was noticed to the community via a listserv, social media, the ANC 1E website, and our e-calendar. I will now conduct the roll for the meeting. Commissioner Gallagher. Commissioner Gallagher. Commissioner Lancaster. Commissioner Ray.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Newland. Commissioner Jacobson. Here. Commissioner Footer.
Here.
Community Member Batal. Community Member Schaaf.
Here.
And Community Member Remington. With 5 of our committee members present, we have a quorum. I will now go ahead and make a motion with I will pull up the agenda, really. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Great. So on the agenda today, we have the consent agenda, which is just approving the April 2023 ANC 1E TPS public meeting minutes. Then we'll have a presentation on the 8th Street transportation package that Commissioner Footer has been working on, and we'll also have a presentation on some Columbia Road traffic safety requests that Commissioner Brown has been doing a lot of work on as well. And there will be a resolution as part of that at the very least. I will now accept a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Great, the agenda is adopted. I'll also now make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the consent agenda, which is the ANC 1E April 2023 TPS public meeting minutes. Is there any dissent? Great, motion passes. We now have time for any community announcements and presentations. So this is a chance for any commissioners or members of the committee or the community to make public announcements, distribute information, or alert the community about any issues. And speakers have 3 minutes. Is there anyone on the committee or a commissioner that would like to make an announcement? All right, hearing none, are there any members of the community that would like to make an announcement outside of the 2 issues that we're going to be discussing in a few minutes? If so, please signify by raising your hand. All right, seeing as no one. Oh, go ahead.
I meant to raise my hand earlier. This is regarding a public space issue. I raised this at the last general body meeting before the ANC during our April meeting. I've been in communication with our mayor's Ward 1 liaison for the mayor's office of community relations and services regarding Bruce Monroe Park. I have been working with them for years to address some of the safety concerns and health and safety concerns and hazards that are at the park, particularly regarding the playground equipment. I've been working with them on removing some of the equipment that is unsafe, torn swings, ripped tennis courts, playground equipment set on fire. We removed one particular piece of playground equipment, and I've been reading and getting some emails concerning that. I have been working with Department of General Services and Parks and Rec to put in orders for this playground equipment, just sharing an update, and this has been going on for months. A lot of these equipment replacement for equipment is in procurement, and we know that that could take quite some time. So this isn't something that we can just order and then install it. Those things need to go through procurement, especially if it has a large price tag tied to it. So just wanted to state that for the record. I'll keep stating it for the record until it gets addressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I'm also running into issues with Banneker Park. There are 3 swing sets that have been missing for at least 6 months now, and it's taken a long time to get any sort of attention on it. And thankfully, those swing sets are now in procurement, but definitely frustrating to deal with. Any other community member announcements before we move on to the official business? All right. The first item on our official business is the 8th Street transportation package that Commissioner Footer has been working on. Commissioner Footer, I will give you time to make your presentation. I think you have a PowerPoint, is that right? So I'll stop sharing.
Yes, thank you. Oop. Sorry, button. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Great. All right, well, thank you all for your time today and taking a moment to provide feedback on this 8th Street transportation package. So the background of this is that essentially, and I'll kind of do this quickly, over the course of the past couple of years, there have been a number of issues, and there have been incremental successes that we've had, such as speed bumps on 8th Street. But really what I've been kind of hearing from people and actually putting a lot of dots together is that there hasn't been a comprehensive kind of approach to actually looking at how we can address some of these things in order to make sure that things are coordinated, there aren't unintended secondary negative impacts, things of that nature. So when I was running for office, I talked about this kind of practice of how to address some of these bigger issues and coming up with a package to address these things, and working with the community to actually leverage their voice to make sure that it, one, was actually something that was addressing their experiences with the issue, and to give the people an opportunity to leverage their voice and to actually vote on something so they felt some ownership of it. So in developing this, what I did was, during the campaign, as I say in this first bullet, I spoke to over 110 residents around the Atlantic Plumbing building, and gather a lot of information from them on a variety of issues. I conducted an on-the-ground assessment, and you'll see a lot of photos and documentation of some of the issues that we cite throughout the entire presentation. And then I collected community input through an online survey. I was very happy to see that we got 80 people to actually complete the survey, and all the results are in here. They're at the end. And then I've been working on doing not only my own research, but working with DDOT, DPW, and Councilmember Nadeau's office to make sure that a lot of the things that I was saying here were within code, made sense, were practical, that kind of thing. So the way that I organize this is that there are 4 basic sections. It's around sidewalks, traffic, parking, and streetlights. This, I know I've shown this to you guys before. This has changed based on the responses I got from the survey. So for sidewalks, And actually, if you don't mind, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to go through each one of these. I'm going to stop at the end of each one and ask for your comments on this particular issue. The pro of that is that it's not so much overwhelming information that you have to remember everything at the end. The con to it is that a lot of these things are interrelated. And so a question might be answered later on. So if I flip through slides, it's only to kind of show you that that might be something that's addressed here or better suited in another place. So just as a heads up. So starting with sidewalks. So the primary issue that I'm hearing from residents are that trash and broken glass are a persistent issue up and down 8th Street between V and Berry. And let me be very clear. When I say 8th Street and what we're focusing on, we're focusing on 8th Street between V and Berry. Now, a lot of the things that you're going to see in here are broken up between V and W, and then W and Berry. And so I'm going to be very intentional in when I say 8th Street between certain blocks, because there's certain things that we're recommending that will impact the community differently. So for trash, we're looking at the whole shebang, the whole shtick. And so we have limited trash bins here. There are 6 trash bins that are in front of Atlantic Plumbing, but there are 0 trash bins on the east side that has the exact same stretch of sidewalk. And there's 0 trash bins between W and Berry Street. Additionally, this season, we have not seen any of the street sweeping. And so DPW, we've been working with DPW and trying to investigate what's been going on around there. Continuing on with this issue, contributing factors is that 8th Street really is a major kind of street and connector to not only Howard University to U Street, but for a lot of people who are coming to U Street from around the city, because there's a lot of parking on 8th Street, not only on both sides of the street, but also a parking lot within Atlantic Plumbing itself. So there's, due to lighting issues, which I get to later slides, there has been an uptick in car thefts in cars, thefts from auto, meaning that people are breaking their windows to try and get things within the car. And here, just as an example, in April, there were 6 incidents of theft from auto, and 5 of those 6 were taking place in Friday and Saturday. So I'm trying to deduce, trying to emphasize that a lot of the activity, crime in particular for this with broken glass, are targeted during the weekend when a lot of people are coming to or attracted to this area for the U Street corridor kind of participation. And then in addition to that, because people are walking around, they're not only going to their car, but they're walking around just this general area. There's just a lot of trash and litter in this that we've been experiencing. So with the great help of Howard University, which I know we have 2 members from Howard University on the call today, and with 930 Club and JVG Smith, we just today had a coordinating call to kind of understand what everybody was doing. And so Howard University maintains the east side of 8th Street between V and W by doing a 2 times a week trash pickup on Mondays and Thursdays. And thanks to conversations with Howard University, we agreed to strategically pick Mondays and Thursdays in order to address some of that stuff over the weekend that I was talking about before. JVG is the owner and maintains the Atlantic Plumbing building. And so they clean the sidewalk daily. And that also bleeds into V Street. And then 930 Club, whenever they have events that actually have a wait line that wraps around the block, that when the event is over, their staff will go and sweep in order to make sure that no debris that was coming from their patrons, particularly waiting in line, has kind of impacted the sidewalk. Additionally, with sidewalks, the next issue is around dislodging and missing sidewalk bricks. Not only are they an eyesore, but they negatively impact public safety, tripping hazards, things of that nature. These are 2 just examples that I found when I started this early on. I've recently found a couple of additional ones, so I may add 1 or 2 more. So at the end of each section, I have these kind of recommendations that specifically address each of the things that we were talking that I go through. So the first one here with respect to sidewalks is installing 3 trash bins on the east side of 8th Street between V and W, and then 3 trash bins on the east side, 3 trash bins on the west side of 8th Street between W and Berry Street. So the total of 9 bins. Next, working with DPW to enforce street sweeping between March and October, as they're supposed to be doing. The third here is, and I get to this a little bit later, but there's a recommendation to turn 8th Street between V and W into a one-way. But once that is done, essentially, if it becomes a one-way street with 2 sides of parking, there are 4 to 5 feet of additional space that we could work with Howard University to use to maybe put in tree boxes, things of that nature, as they're starting to think about the designs for the Bond Reco building. That's just available. It's not necessarily that they have to do it, but people wanted to include tree boxes as something that we wanted to highlight. And then last year is DDOT work with Atlantic Plumbing to replace those dislodged bricks. So, Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'm going to stop for a moment and just ask if there are questions with respect to the sidewalks, and then I'll move to the next section, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I think just to help speed things along, maybe allow each person 1 question for each section, and then I'll also allow the community members 1 question for each section, or a comment for each section, and then at the end we'll have plenty of time for other questions. So, Commissioner Ray.
Thanks. No, the only number in there, I mean, this is all great, of course, but the only number in there that caught my attention was 9 trash cans on that stretch of 8th Street, which seems, I mean, that seems like a lot. How far apart are each of the cans that you're contemplating?
Yeah, great question. One, I don't know exactly what the distance should be. My hope is that they would be kind of equal distance apart, but I do have a diagram here that shows the full stretch. Let me just scroll to it. So this is what it actually looks like. And so my hope that what DPW would do is they would put them equally. So 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. And so that would be 6. And then in front of Bond Reco, which is here, 1, 2, 3. Whatever DDOT thinks makes sense, but it is long enough that I do feel like there need to be a couple kind of scattered throughout the thing. Also, they've now set a precedent, and I think it's too much, but they've set a precedent where they have 6 trash cans in this stretch right here.
Yeah, that seems excessive to me, to be frank.
Yeah, it's a
I'll
lot.
leave it to you to work on, but
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
And Committee Member Schaaf.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the street sweeping, that was sort of one of the issues that you had identified through your research, and I understand that there were vehicles parked there. I mean, doesn't DDOT also conduct enforcement by towing vehicles when they're? I mean, do we understand sort of why that wasn't happening as it should be? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a great question. They still haven't gotten back to me on it, but I've been communicating with them weekly. They did kind of highlight, and they want to put some numbers together, but they did highlight that one of the reasons that they're anticipating is because there are too many cars. So my question to them was, well, what is the threshold, or what's the criteria for there are too many cars in this general area, and so we can't tow them all, so we're going to skip it, versus them being able to tow multiple cars that may be parked there. So my response to them was, I have communicated with residents in this building on 3 separate occasions that this was happening, and that they would be ticketed and towed, and that when it was starting. And so, because I feel like I've done a very good job in communicating when this is happening, I've told DDOT or DPW take it away and tow away. Maybe 1 week we ticket just to see if it can curb some behavior. Next week, then we tow them. So I'm still waiting to hear back exactly what their response is, but 100% agree. And I can absolutely report back on what they say.
Great, thank you.
And then I'll take a minute or so here. I guess two quick things. The one thing to call out here for people that aren't aware of the street, I'm pretty sure the building that Brian resides in is the only place that people live in currently. Is that right, Commissioner Footer?
The Atlantic Plumbing? Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, communicating out to your building is communicating to everyone who lives on that street, essentially. And then the other thing about the sidewalk extension, I think it's important to clarify that Howard wouldn't be responsible for the sidewalk or putting in the tree boxes, but they could work with DDOT, and this is something that we would support them on if they wanted to, right?
Correct. You know what? I don't know the logistics of that.
Of the tree box stuff, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if like we could incorporate it into the bond reco design plans, and so therefore it would be part of their overall kind of sidewalk landscape plan and all of that, or if that's something where DDOT would come in and they would say, we want to put these tree boxes here, and it would be their responsibility. But the point in the recommendation is for them to work together to figure that out.
Got it. And basically the idea here is there's going to be extra space on the street, so we could remove some of that and give sidewalk and make it a little bit more of a walkable area for the people who are going to be moving into that building.
Yeah, and if you don't mind indulge me, I'll run down to just to give you a visual of what that means. So it's the one way, sorry. Just trying to find it. Yes, so here in the traffic space, I started to talk about the width of the street. And so right now, there is a two-way traffic with two sides, with parking on both sides. And so DDOT's standards and guidelines suggest that a two-way with parking on both sides should be at a minimum 34 feet curb to curb. And we've measured it at roughly 29 to 30 feet. And so if we go to a one-way with parking on both sides, the standard is 25. So if it's at about 30 feet and we need just 25, then that would give 4 to 5 feet for them to expand the sidewalk, do something like that. One of the things that DDOT also said within that conversation was that sometimes they don't like to turn streets with this kind of width into a one-way because it invites speeding. It gives a little bit more leeway outside of that, like 25 feet, extra 5 feet for them to kind of speed away. And so I recommended, okay, well, if there were 4 to 5 feet and the building is about to be built there and they took it and it became part of the sidewalk, they were like, that would make us a lot more comfortable. That would be a great thing to do.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Brown.
Excuse me. In relation to the tree boxes, I would definitely ask DDOT about the policy around that, because I think there is a policy on who maintenances the tree boxes prior to, and then I think like for residents, for sure, like there's a time period that DDOT will maintenance those public space areas, and then it's up to like the owner of the home. And considering Howard is an institution, I'm not really sure if they consider that, how they would consider that. But it would be good to clarify and for Howard to know their role in this.
Yeah, and that's a great point. One of the things that we take into consideration here is that the bond reco building is going to be developed start construction in 2 years, and it'll be delivered in 5. And so a year and a half, end of 2024 is when they'll start construction. And so it doesn't make sense for us to advocate for DDOT to come in and put certain things like tree boxes, which it would take about a year just to go through design, all that stuff. And then it would take another half year for it to be installed. And then it would be immediately torn out because Bonreco is about to start their construction. So a lot of these things are more kind of long-term, or some of these, not a lot, I apologize. Some of these things are more forward-looking. And that's why our recommendation is more of, asking for a particular branch to work with Howard, for example, on the design aspect of it, rather than, what actually putting it in at this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would, and you probably are going to do this, but would suggest for DDOT to present some design options, because just thinking about the tree boxes that we've seen along the residential streets that are embedded in the public space, are the sidewalks, right? And then others that are embedded in the street, right? Like yeah, that remove parking spaces, and then the ones that are on Water Street that are undesirable. I would really be clear about the design options and present them before you and before Howard.
Yeah, and my hope is to work with Howard University on partnering up on what that potentially could look like. Because they're still going through the process of putting the designs together for the Bonreco. We clearly want it to fit into what their look and feel is. Howard University came and did an entire presentation for our community about Bonreco, and people were so excited. They love the feel of it. They love how Eden's is going to make it feel very much. They're restoring and keeping true some of the architecture and all that. And so I agree. I love that line of questioning. My next step will be 100% to ask Howard first to make sure we're on the same page and see what their kind of thoughts are around what that should look like and how it fits in with their overall design.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And are there any folks in the attendees, in the community members that want to make comments or have questions? If so, please signify by raising your hand and I can change the settings so you can speak or go on mute. All right, I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand, so let's move on to the next one.
Awesome. So traffic. So as I mentioned, what we're hearing is that there are just a lot of safety issues with having this street so narrow with two-sided parking. Now, excuse me, what we've been hearing from people, actually, I'll go to the recommendation in a moment. So the issue additionally around traffic, pedestrians and cars have had a hard time and feel unsafe crossing Berry Place at 8th Street. And so it's a three-way intersection with one stop sign on 8th Street. And cars traveling on both east and west on Berry Street kind of are very fast. I'm not going to say speeding because I don't know the exact speed limit, but people have felt like it's quite fast. And there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, particularly when Howard students are getting out of class or classes are transitioning, that kind of thing. There are large pockets throughout the day where people are there. And I've seen it firsthand where people are dodging cars, and it also makes it difficult for some cars on 8th Street to get onto Berry. And so this specific recommendation came from a number of community members through the survey. And so I added it on to this. The next issue is around the volume of cars that now are traveling on V Street between 9th and Georgia over the weekend. So I wanted to call this out because the community is very happy about why this is happening, but wants to potentially help try to mitigate some of the traffic. So essentially, the reason that we're seeing it is because the mayor's nightlife task force instituted a temporary traffic rerouting effort on the U Street corridor, and one of the impacted intersections was 9th Street and Florida, 9th, and where Florida and 9th kind of become one. And so what they've been doing is they've been rerouting traffic onto V Street between 9th and Georgia. Absolutely want to maintain. It has had a significant impact on ATV and dirt bikes over the weekends. People are very happy with it, so we want it to stay. But I do want to call attention to why that might be happening. So traffic recommendations. First one here, as I mentioned, is to recommend that 8th Street between V and W become a one-way going northbound. Now, again, I want to be clear, V to W, not V all the way to Barry. This is one segment. So in this segment, the reason why we feel like it might be doable is that 9th Street is a one-way going southbound, and W Street is a two-way that's about to open. And so people who can go northbound, which would be the opposite of the southbound on 9th, they can go northbound. If they get stuck, they can quickly get onto W Street and reroute if they needed to. Secondarily, it would help to funnel cars off of V Street, particularly over the weekend when we're experiencing that high volume of traffic due to the mayor's initiative. And I will stop there for this particular recommendation. And then the next two are to take 2 spots away in front of Atlantic Plumbing and to install a 15-minute parking zone, residential loading. I've talked to DDOT about doing a pilot around a particular method they have in New York. Very open to however it makes sense, but essentially trying to get cars that are stopped in the intersection to have a dedicated space on the side that they can temporarily move into so it doesn't stop traffic. And then installing additional stop signs to make the intersection at 8th and Berry Place a 3-way stop sign. So those are the traffic recommendations. Again, I'll stop and ask if there are any questions.
Commissioner Brown.
On this particular slide, so the kind of residential drop off, what is the purpose again?
Yeah, so because it is so narrow and it has two parking on both sides, when cars already have a hard time passing by each other. They go extremely slow, and there are a lot of mirrors that end up breaking and all of that. And so it causes some backup. And so when a delivery truck does it as well, it can create less space for cars to pass each other, and it just creates a lot more traffic. And for those particular trucks, they're there for a little bit longer than like a quick pickup or dropping off food. They're dropping off packages and doing that kind of stuff. It's more of like a 10 to 15 minute experience. So this would create about 22 feet of space for a truck to kind of go into that dedicated slot or parking, if you will, or these temporary, drop off of Ubers, that kind of thing, to just be in this space for just a few minutes, so they're not in the lane and disrupting traffic.
So would it be like a commercial loading zone for the businesses, or are you talking about like a UPS, Amazon kind of truck?
It would not be commercial zone, because it would be for people who are going to be dropping off food
For the residents.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if it's public, go ahead.
Oh no, please go ahead. If it's public one.
If it's public space, I think that would be new for DDOT. So yeah, I would definitely be interested in seeing like what their thoughts are, because this is happening like across the city, and something seems like something new for the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
And to that exact point, that exact question of like, well, is it a commercial thing? No, we don't want it to be restricted just to commercial because it's for Ubers and that kind of thing. That's where they kind of came up with the New York pilot. So they have some sort of, I forget the terminology they use, but it's a dedicated loading zone that's for this kind of 15-minute commercial / Uber Eats, Uber pickup, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a great point.
Larger implications for the city.
Right?
So the two spaces that you're talking about, is it against the building or the gates across the street?
It's against the building. So this is the
Okay.
entrance to Atlantic Plumbing. And so it would be the two spots directly in front of Atlantic
Okay.
Plumbing.
Cool. Thank you.
And in the interest of time, since I don't see any other hands raised, we can just move on. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Josh. Just a quick question regarding the sort of what you just said about the traffic flow in the neighborhood. You know, one thing to note is that 9th Street is not a through street when it comes to Berry Place, and so is that going to change at all, or is that is that going to be the same? And then, or I mean, is there more information you have on that? And then also on W Street, do we know what the actual plan for that is? And also, will it be a two-way street? Now it's kind of a little ambiguous. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So I can't speak to the Bryant. I'm sorry, did you say Bryant Street?
No, so 9th and Berry, it's like a sort of a trash area for Howard. And so there's a gate there and you can't actually get through.
Yeah, and great point. And that's one of the reasons why we were just suggesting V to W Street be one way, is because the W Street, which I wish I could turn my camera around because it's right in front of me here. It is a two-way. And you're right that it's not a thoroughfare. And so they wouldn't be coming from that far north. If this was a one-way from V to W, they needed to reroute, they would go W Street, which is a two-way, and then immediately go southbound on 9th Street. So it would just be one block that they travel from W to that three-way intersection of 9th, V, Florida, all of that.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Continue.
Right. So next we go into parking. So what we've been hearing from a number of people is just that the parking is confusing. I'm sorry, the signage is confusing, and there seems to be a lot of wasted opportunity on 8th Street because there are 5 different garage entrances on the Bon Reco building, and it has 3 curb cuts for those 5. And I did a measurement of them, and that's a total of about 140 feet of kind of dead space. But the Bon Reco building has been closed, condemned, if you will, for more than 10 years. And those garages have no plan for re-entering. In fact, one of them is even barricaded, which I'm circling in this middle picture here. And so after talking to, well, I'm jumping the gun, I'm going to the recommendation. So that's just one piece of the issue. Oh, well, now I'll go right into it. So the recommendation is after talking to DDOT, this is actually a fascinating thing that the city does. So if Howard University was not planning to redevelop Bon Reco, the process for decommissioning a curb cut is that the city has to enact eminent domain in order to purchase back that curb cut. I find that fascinating, but it also takes many, many, many years. So what DDOT was suggesting is that, well, anytime a new building, regardless of how many curb cuts they currently have, when a new building is being proposed, the design plans have to assume that they have none, and they have to reapply within the design application for curb cuts. So the whatever is currently there on that plot doesn't matter. They have to reapply for the new building to have anything. So with that in mind, because we are Bon Reco is going to be basically redeveloped, and the construction will start at the end of 2024. DDOT was suggesting that if Howard University was able or interested in decommissioning it, that they would take that as a sign that they could come in and turn it into parking spaces. And so my hope is when I speak with Howard University and run through all of these and how we could actually work together to make this come to fruition is how we could go about potentially decommissioning those curb cuts so that the city could come in, and it would equate to about six, I believe it's six parking spots, additional parking spots, because we would need 20 feet for the art, the art in the right of way, which looks like this. I'm sure people have all seen them, but we have them all around this neighborhood. And so this is what it currently looks like. Here's one of the garages, and then here are the other four. You know, here's one of them, and then here's the other two. Now, I love this picture because this red car is technically illegally parked. And so it's further demonstrating how confusing the signage is, because there's a little bit of curve here, but there's no signage or anything like that. So this is a really good depiction of there's this dead space, people are confused by it. And so if we actually created the opportunity for the signage to go up and all that, we would create 4 or 6 new spots. The other recommendations, so that's the decommissioning curb cut, adding the spaces, doing the art, and then updating the signage. So that's it for the parking recommendations. That was a quick one.
And then just being mindful of time, maybe we can do another one quickly and then open to more questions. And sorry, how many extra slides do you actually have at this point? I'm just trying to.
Yeah, thank you. The street lights are the last section, and then I would just show you the results, and I can skip the results. I emailed this presentation to everybody, so you guys can look at them. But this is just demonstrating that, like, what the response rates were for the different recommendations.
Cool.
So, and if it's helpful, I can just cut to the punchline. Lighting is not great between V and W, or it's inconsistent. The Atlantic Plumbing site is very well lit. It has a lot of different lighting, not only on the building, but also at these Washington light posts, versus on the east side of the street, there are just 2 lights, and here's what it looks like. So there are these 2 that are here, and then all these other ones. So it's very dark. And a lot of people have complained about feeling unsafe. A lot of people have suggested, and there's no evidence for this, but that it exacerbates a lot of the breaking into cars and that kind of stuff, because there's not a lot of, it's just rife for opportunity, I guess, for crime. And so again, Howard, being the amazing partners that they are, has already committed to putting up temporary fixtures on the building, and we're hoping that's something that will be installed by the end of the summer and the early fall. They're going through the process, and to be completely frank, I think that that's going to be sufficient for the recommendation is kind of twofold, where the temporary one is to install lighting solutions. I think that Howard has been amazing and is already committed to that. I think that now it's also talking to DDOT to see what capabilities they have for the short term. Totally understand that you cannot put in these brand new streetlights, additional streetlights that go into the grid, all of that, just for all of them to be torn down at the end of this year and the end of next year. And so, this one might be a more difficult one to accomplish, but feel very good because of Howard's great commitment and partnership. So that's the temporary one. The longer term one is more of the community design consistency. And I know that the DDOT's neighborhood planning branch has already been working with Howard University about articulating what that is. It's fully demonstrated again with what the Reverb just put up over there. So these two are already kind of happening, and it's more of demonstrating to the community that we're hearing that this is an issue that you've expressed, and here's how we're going about it, even though a lot of the stuff is already in the works. Any questions on that one?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Commissioner Footer.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you want to just quickly go over the survey results, and then we can give more folks time for questions?
Yeah, sure. So there are the survey originally had 10 recommendations. 80 people had responded to them, and had a really, really good response rate, and nothing too surprising except for one, which was I originally had proposed putting 8th Street, all of 8th Street between V and Berry Street, to put it on DDOT's truck restriction list. It would mitigate a lot of big trucks coming down the street. There really wasn't a lot of direct impact that was going to come from that. It was only going to impact one truck, which is the UPS truck. It would make them come in line with more of what some of the other delivery places are doing. But it received a lot of kind of don't agree with it, and was like the lowest priority. So took that as a symbol of that was just something that we nixed. So so then it became 9, and then there were a number of additional recommendations that the community had, and I put them in there. So now we have a total of 13. And you can see here, each slide has the results from each individual recommendation, has the count and the topic area that it included or it pertained to. This is the full list. So that's my shtick.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I guess we'll switch things up a little bit. Do any of the attendees want to raise their hand and say anything? I know we have a couple folks from Howard on, maybe either Teresa or Wendell, if you have any questions or comments that you want to make, I'd love to hear them. And Teresa, I will just go ahead and promote you since. And Teresa, I see you're on now, so whenever you want to unmute.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Hey, Wendell, how you doing? Thanks so much for
Hey,
joining tonight.
I'm doing well. Well, good afternoon or good evening now, committee members. Thank you for giving Howard University the opportunity to talk. Commissioner Footer, it's always a pleasure to see you. First and foremost, I appreciate all the work that you have put in to producing this presentation. I can only imagine it was an arduous task. I'm speaking tonight just to ask the committee to pause on taking a vote for this presentation to go out of committee. I think that there's a number of things in which Howard supports, particularly when we talk about the sidewalk issues, the broken glass, the trash, we've been in constant communications in terms of making sure that the cleaning schedule has been changed. But then there's a host of other concerns that just requires more time. I do understand that you mentioned that it's taken about 4 months to really compile this information. When you initially brought it to our attention, we were under the impression that you were independently conducting the study on your own, just reaching out to various government agencies. We were not under the impression in which the agency representatives that you mentioned, whether it was DDOT or DPW, or even the council office, were meeting consistently just to help produce this. If that were the case, then we would have had a designated representative. When you initially brought this to my attention, this was almost 2 weeks ago, and then you have.
I'm so sorry. I want to just clarify. There wasn't a group that was putting this together. Everything that I said when I was meeting with them were one-on-one conversations, me reaching out. It was not like a group that was getting together on a regular basis. You didn't miss out on like a committee or anything of that nature. This is all my individual research and numerous conversations individually with people from many agencies.
No, I got that, and I appreciate that. I think my point was, if there were a group setting, it just would have been helpful just to make sure how the commission or the committee and the DC government agencies were chiming in simultaneously. So when it got to our first level, then the second level, which will go to the developers and other members of senior leadership at Howard, there will be no lapse in communications, to say the least. I think another thing is when we come out to the community, just to give an update on various projects, we normally have a process. When we think about the conversations to relocate the daycare center, I think we had several meetings, or 7 meetings, pardon me, and this predates me. But I say all that to say, we just want to make sure that all of the questions from the community has been answered. In this situation, we still have some more questions. We need to get more input from our development partners. We do recognize that, we want to continue to do what we do as Howard University, which has been a good community partner to you. But as your colleague, Ms. Brown, mentioned, she talked about the tree boxes. And if we were to support this plan, who would be responsible for maintaining the tree boxes after the implementation of them? When we talk about turning the street one way, it will be helpful if a DDOT representative was on a call so they can do a traffic calming studies, and then there's no Commissioner Footer talk to this person, and then you convey that to Wendell. But if we established a designated task force just to help support you, because that's our ultimate goal as community partners, but we just need more time to really digest this and see what the long-term and short-term implications of this transportation study consist of. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time, but I just want to make that comment. But I do appreciate you. This is really good. I think this is a good starting point, but I do caution folks that when you typically go 0 to 120 real quick, things can spin out of control. So we just want to make sure that we're tracking the process of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for those comments, Wendell. I guess the thing I want to be mindful of is I think some of these things are maybe a little bit more urgent than others, and I know we want to try to come up with some sort of package deal. The one thing that I struggle with is, even if we did pass something, it would likely take DDOT a very long time to implement anything at all. And so it might be beneficial. Maybe we take a pause on this for this meeting, but might be beneficial to try to have a meeting between some members of the ANC and you and other folks at Howard to talk about what are the things that we can all agree on right away that would be easy for us to start pushing DDOT on and try to get some sort of buy-in from them. Because I know for some of the other projects that we've done with them, it's taken a lot of work to push them to get any sort of results.
Very much so. And once again, I'm here, Teresa's here. I used to work in district government. I know folks all across DDOT. So we want to help you all as the community, but we definitely want to make sure that we're in the process every step of the way. And I know Teresa had her hand raised. I'm not sure if you know, she wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, Teresa, go for it. If you're speaking, I see that you're unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. So there might be a microphone issue. I still can't hear you if you're talking. I assume no one else can hear Teresa. Okay.
Well, I do want to just kind of clarify a couple of things. So one, I think the way that I'm intending for this package to be accepted and kind of the takeaway from this is that this is the community's voice. This is the community saying, hey, these are the issues that we want. We're not experts. We're not the design people. We don't know exactly what the steps are for implementation, but we need to start somewhere in being able to articulate, here are the issues that are important to us based on our understanding from our basic research and all these conversations. The next step from something like this is to work on what are the implementation plans for getting some of these things done. A lot of them may take a lot of work. A lot of them may be longer term projects, things of that nature, or we need to do studies. I absolutely agree. This is a lot of what the community is asking for, and it's giving them a platform. This is something that they haven't had, and this is important. So Howard University has been great on dealing with a number of these issues. I do want to highlight, though, that I have tried multiple times to work with Howard on a lot of these things in a comprehensive, coordinated way. There's an email from December, an email from January, and an email from February, where I specifically, even in February, gave an example of turning 8th Street into a one-way. And my specific request was, can we please meet with you guys in order to, and I will quote, we're working with DDOT on turning 8th Street between V and W Street into a one-way going northbound. If we work with the development teams or at least share some of our DDOT activities and desires early in the process, we may be able to mitigate any potential back and forth in the future permitting process. So I just want to be very clear. If Howard University has a different way that they would like for us to try and engage on important issues like this, I really, really, really encourage you to be more articulate with how you want that. Because when I say that I've been working on this for 4 months and trying to engage with you, that's what I've been trying to do. And this is the culmination of the people's voice. The next step of this is to work on how do we implement. DDOT was giving me advice on these things because it's the guidelines. They're not telling me about the implementation of it because it's going to require studies, all of that kind of stuff. So the takeaway from this is that it's the people's voice in articulating what their concerns and their thoughts are. Next step, it would be to actually work on how do we implement this.
No, and I appreciate that. And I just want to say a few things. If anyone has tracked Howard, our whole existence is about empowering people, students. So in no way, shape, or form are we trying to take anyone's voice. We're all about empowerment. I think you mentioned something that was very pivotal. You mentioned what's the best way in which Howard can work with you to make sure that this plan gets implemented and the community's voice is heard. I think there's a few things. I think the first thing, since you mentioned that the community isn't the experts, which I understand in most regards, then I think that it's important to bring the experts to the table so there's no lapse in communication, as well as we don't want to get so far down the process, because community folks say, hey, we can get this one-way street, we can get this, this, and this. And the reality is there was no management of expectations. And then at step 10, when we could have mitigated this at step 1, we say, you know what? This can't be done after all. Then folks would feel like I wasted time, effort, and energy, when if we brought everyone to the table initially to get on the same page, then, we can make sure we cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's. And I think in terms of how we can best move forward in the process, is to get the agencies involved. You have my commitment and Teresa's commitment from Howard University that we will be present, and you can still bring the community involved as well. I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to make sure that this area is thriving, is safe, people walk back and forth, the increase the density. We all want the same thing. So I don't think that that's the challenge there. It's just more so dealing with the coordination to make sure that our times, that the schedule meets all of the different parties. Another thing you mentioned in terms of you've emailed us on numerous occasions. I think some of the emails weren't as clear as you may have intended them to be. I know we speak on a number of things. Sometimes you may email Dr. Leonard, you may email Teresa, you and I, we starting to develop our relationship, working relationship, which I think is dynamic. I appreciate you profusely. So, I like this dialogue. I like this back and forth conversation. We're here. We're like State Farm. We're a good neighbor. Like we just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. That's my only point.
Yeah, and thank you. So I did email you guys asking if we could potentially meet next week. Do you have a time in mind that we can put on the calendar here and now, just to make sure that we really do have that meeting?
Yes, no, we're in preparation for commencement. Graduation is on 14th, so it's like an all hands on deck. We just got a new president, so we're just trying to get through this season, and then we'll definitely we can make sure it's all hands on deck dealing with this issue, or not this issue, with this study. So I'll say if not next week, we'll definitely get together before the month is out. And I'll say this, if you need help coordinating or bringing the right agencies to the table, I know some folks.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for offering that. I'll give it some consideration.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for all your thoughts and all of the work that you've done at Howard over your time, Wendell. Really appreciate it.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, my intention for today, I did express that I wanted for this to be considered at the ANC meeting in May. I am totally fine if we don't vote on this today. I do want to make sure that we give an opportunity for everyone to weigh in and people feel good about this. The intention of this is really to make sure that everyone's coming together. And I've done that for about 90% of it. And I look forward to working and learning more about how to deal and communicate with Howard University. But if Howard feels like we could benefit from another month, I'm happy to do that. But I want to be clear that the ANC, I'm going to bring this to the ANC by June. The people of this neighborhood specifically elected me under the auspice of I was going to actually bring some results to the neighborhood, and I'm not going to entertain delays. I've been working on this for a number of months and have tried to coordinate on numerous occasions, and so I'm happy to do it through June to June, but June's going to be when it's going to happen at the latest.
Got it. Thank you, Commissioner Footer. And it sounds like Wendell at least understands what you're getting at there. And I think at the very least, we can probably come up with some sort of resolution where we agree, like these, as a group, we can say maybe the language isn't DDOT shall install a three-way stop sign at the corner of 8th Street and Berry Place. Maybe it's something along the lines of we spoke with the community thinks this, some of the other experts are thinking this. We just want to make sure that DDOT starts the ball rolling here. So maybe we can come to some sort of agreement on language that isn't as prescriptive, to get to Wendell's point of, let's try to not get too far ahead of the process and make sure that we're just saying we at least like want DDOT to start doing some of these studies.
Absolutely, that's a very good point.
So I guess given all that, I recommend that we don't take a vote tonight, and then it sounds like Commissioner Footer and I would be happy to, I mean, I personally would be happy to work with Howard on this too, and learn from the process, since I think there's probably a lot that I can learn from Wendell's sneaky contacts at the different government agencies that he has. So I would probably just want to join because I think it'll be interesting. But
Absolutely.
appreciate yeah, everyone's time on this and all the thoughts here. I guess Commissioner Foote, are you happy with that? Are you good with those? That is next steps? Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and it looks like we have no one else in the audience. So I don't think we need to, there's nothing for us to consider. We can just move on to the next item in the agenda at this point. But appreciate all the work that you've done on this, Commissioner Footer, and Wendell, Teresa. Appreciate you joining the meeting and giving your perspective, and sorry that you're having all these technical issues, Teresa. Cool. With that, we will move on to Commissioner Brown's presentation on Columbia Road, and I will, Wendell, I'll move you and Teresa back to just attendees. You're welcome to stick around if you want to learn more about what we're looking for on Columbia Road, but you certainly don't have to. Take it away, Commissioner Brown.
Excellent. Thank you. So neighbors on the 500 and 600 block of Columbia Road Northwest has shared some concerns about traffic congestion during rush hour, continuous speeding, and lack of visibility that had basically impacted neighborhood conditions along Columbia Road as cars and cyclists and pedestrians traverse from east to west. And just for context, cars will usually cut through from Ward 5, North Capitol Street, the hospital centers to get into the northwest side of our city. So this particular Columbia Road, this particular corridor has been designated has been studied by DDOT and is a part of the crosstown multimodal transportation project. So it is slated and a designated location to have a priority bus lane. There was funding in the council budget, in the mayor's budget, to fund this particular project. We're unsure about the timeline, but want to put some traffic safety measures in place to address issues primarily with speed. Very similar to the issues that we've been facing on Irving Street. Columbia Road at the 600 block intersection has a bit of a dip. It goes up as you kind of cut through Georgia Avenue, but people really speed through that area and speed through the neighborhoods. And issue areas of concern is the location of various public goods, public resources that are in the community. We have Woodbridge Daycare Center that's directly on that kind of 600 block area of Columbia Road, where a lot of parents drop off their children and they're taken to the park. So we have Wingari Gardens and Bruce Monroe Community Park. We also have the hospital centers, and that's a major bus lane for the 8th Street buses, and of course it crosses over the intersection of the 70 and 79 buses. So lots of activity that's happening around that area, although it's a residential block. So I met with the community last month, and we organized a community walkthrough. We had DDOT, constituent services representative from Councilmember Nadeau's office. The Ward 1 Mokers team was present. And we basically heard from the community and thought through some of their ideas and strategies for reducing speed, and heard from DDOT about what would be a viable solution to move forward through a TSA, a traffic safety assessment request. And so I'm happy to work with this committee, and have been working with Chairman Jacobson on some strategies that we can include in a TSA. So this resolution includes a lot of those strategies that we in the community have been pushing for, things that the community supports. And I bulleted out in this resolution. One is to remove peak restricted parking times to the Zone 1 residential RPP parking, except for street cleaning hours, both sides on the 500 through 700 blocks of Columbia Road. And I added 700 block just to maintain that continuity, because I would hate to create a bottleneck as people are cutting through Columbia through Georgia Avenue. So I really wanted to close up that loop, and as people are moving through Columbia Heights, and avoid that bottleneck. Also, installing a speed table or rumple strips, very similar to the intersection of Georgia Avenue, New Hampshire. We looked at an elevated speed table, but I really think that speed tables at the Georgia Avenue and New Hampshire intersection is a better viable solution, because it just avoids the shaking of cars when slowing down speed. And DDOT believe that was also viable for this particular street, since it's an emergency route. It's a major bus route, so we wanted to make sure that we're putting in like speed humps or speed bumps, because that's not a viable solution. If there's an emergency, people need to cut through it and get access in a timely fashion to folks who are in need of emergency services. Rumble strips on Irving Street are also a great example. They're light, they're not heavy, it avoids the shaking. There are homes that are on Irving, and I don't hear any complaints from them, and that was to help reduce the speed that is close to Bruce Monroe Park. And also installing 2-lane markings. The street has never had markings, and so people trying to navigate the lanes has been really difficult. Recognizing that if we merge to a lane shift in having those 2 lanes, DDOT would have to change the markings back to address that. So that could be an immediate action that DDOT, that really wouldn't take a lot of action. It wouldn't need an NOI for that. It would just be DDOT marking up the lanes. Installing signage in both the street and the alley. So that could be the speed limit sign, residential area signage, children at play, since we have the parks and the childcare centers and slow signs. And then lastly, a dedicated non-parking space with markings or flexi posts at the access alley point located at the 600 Columbia Road, and that's to increase the visibility and create some clearance for cars that are entering and exiting the alley. a lot of the provisions that are included in this resolution are similar to the changes that were made on Irving Street. Very similar approaches, very similar issues that were challenged by and similar issues with speed. So the traffic safety measures aren't things that are completely out of scope. And we did work with DDOT to get their insight and advisement on these traffic safety measures. So putting it forward to the committee, and again, these are short-term solutions because we do know that the bus lanes are coming, they're funded. They passed through the council and through the mayor's office in this long-term plan. So would love to hear questions and thoughts from the committee. This resolution would accompany the TSA that I'll work with Chairman Jacobson to be submitted for DDOT. So it's definitely not something that we know actions will take place right away, but we will work with DDOT to get some updates from them, and happy to share back with the committee as well. Looking for your support. I also have to raise that the community was flyered. Several folks included flyers on doors about this this meeting. I don't see members of the community here present today, but I've worked with the community on these provisions, so they're very supportive of it.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Brown, for all your work on this. Really appreciate all the time and effort you put into talking to the community and doing the walkthrough and putting this resolution together. So thank you. I guess my only one thing that I wanted to clarify, since I'm not sure if you mentioned this, is that the reason we want to push for some of this is that cars don't, like, there are potentially two places that cars could park on either side of the street. During rush hour, one of those rows of cars are removed, and people don't typically park on that side of the street even outside of rush hour. And so what tends to happen is that cars are just flying past through, like Commissioner Footer was mentioning with 8th Street. If you were to widen the road and have it just one lane, then it's much easier for cars to speed through. And so by adding in that extra parking lane at all times, then it'll slow down vehicles substantially.
Yep, that's the biggest change. And you know, we have a speed cam on Irving Street, and that's short term. So I know folks are liking the speed cams, but you know, the mayor tends not to approve cameras in, you know, where there's a concentration of it already. So yeah, this would be something to kind of help mitigate that in light of that issue, and also recognizing that if the community gets used to having 2 lanes of parking, several conversations with them. I know neighbors change over time, but you know, they're aware that, you know, the bus lanes are coming, and you know, that extra lane of parking won't have to go away to accommodate for that. I believe Commissioner Footer has his hand up.
Yeah, go for Commissioner Footer.
This is awesome. Thank you for bringing this to us and for all your hard work on it. For the last bullet, adding the dedicated non-parking space, I just learned about the DDOT's Art in the Right of Way program. If you think that it might be something that would be helpful, or add a little bit of visibility to some of the things that you're mentioning here, I would highly recommend maybe including that or reaching out to them.
Great. I just made a note of that.
And I can send you the link to their website if that's helpful.
Now, I did include a whereas that ANC1A supports the multimodal transportation plan and is committed to working with the community on these changes. ANC 1A supported the plan throughout the whole process, but just wanted to get a sense of the committee because, we have never voted in support of it. But I'm just flagging that is Commissioner Jacobson is at the last, it's the second page. Yeah, the whereas after the bullets. So, it's nothing formal, but I did want to get a sense of the committee if that is something that, we all feel comfortable including in there. Because I don't think that we've ever submitted anything formal as a new commission to DDOT.
I won't speak for the entirety of the committee, but I will say, given the discussions we've had at the committee, I think pretty much everyone would be more than happy to include that and would want us to include it. Yeah, the only suggestion that I had when we were emailing about this is making it even more explicit that we are acknowledging that we're asking them to put in parking and that they should eventually take away that parking when they put in the bus lane, and that we're very supportive of that bus lane project.
Yeah, and I can add in supportive of the bus lane project as well. I don't think it's necessary to talk about the parking. I mean, when it goes away, right? And the community will have to adjust. And that'll be the same for Irving Street. I think the real reason why we're doing this is in light of this, in light of us waiting on this project, and the real concern is the timeline of it. Like this is something that's needed like immediately, and anything in the interim that can be included there to address these issues is really what this is about.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I guess I'm just trying to give the, for lack of a better word, political coverage to DDOT that we're very supportive of the bus lane, and that we don't want like any perception that these parking lanes are being installed to mean that we are not supportive of the bus lane at some point in the future.
Yeah, and I think my concern is just the framing of it too. Is like we're like not even trying to create additional parking. We know it's a benefit. It's just lifting those restrictions to narrow the lane. And I just want to make that message like perfectly clear. And I like think that DDOT and everything that they do in the community, whatever pushback they get is pushback. But I just don't want to put language in there that kind of triggers folks. Because I want to make sure that I'm clear in what I'm doing and what it is and what it is not. But I do think that including something in there about the support for the dedicated bus lanes makes that perfectly clear, because that's been the messaging all along for ANC 1A. We included all of the kind of measures that were included in that transportation study, like the bike lanes, and for Columbia Road, that would be the dedicated bus lanes. We don't know what that's going to look like, right? But this committee would need to work with them on the design. And actually that is something that I absolutely think the language should include, because the process that we went through before the ANC 1A Transportation Committee on the dedicated bike lanes throughout Parkview has been an absolute seamless process in gathering input with the community, making that public, and really helping the community understand these changes and being involved in the design process from start to finish, and working with them on implementation. And I want the same process for this committee. And I think that that would be so effective. So I actually would probably revise it to also include something about that, just to kind of put it on the record. And I think that, if anything, would demonstrate our significant support for this project.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, and we can work offline on that language. Did other folks have questions or comments? It's just that beautifully written, I guess. Any other comments that you had, Commissioner Brown? Otherwise, I can accept a motion here.
I move to approve this resolution for a TSA addressing transportation issues and including proposed transportation measures from the 400 through 700 blocks of Columbia Road.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And there's no one opposed because there's no one else on the meeting at this point. So, all right, we are good to go there. Are there any other questions, or sorry, are there any other topics for discussion tonight? Seeing none, I will make a motion with unanimous consent to adjourn the May Transportation and Public Spaces Committee meeting of ANC 1E. Is there any dissent? All right, the meeting is adjourned as of 8:30 p.m. on the dot. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, June 7th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Appreciate all your thoughts and questions, and looking forward to continuing to working with you all.
Thank you all. Good evening.
Thanks all.